Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera. Welcome back to Fantasy, Lore, and More. And today we're talking to Toni Binns, and we're going to be hearing all about her book, Choice of the Traveler. So, welcome.
Thank you for the welcome. I'm glad to join you.
Why don't you tell us about the Choice of the Traveler?
So, The Choice of the Traveler is a story of found family. It centers around a group of characters that uh, is centered around a best friendship. So, best friends forever is a very prevalent theme in it. It has some slow burn romance, unknown magic, and then, of course, portals, where maybe spoiler alert there, but portals are a big part of the storyline and what ends up happening in the book. So, little quick thing. Our main character is Betha. She's going to college. Finally, she transfers to the university that her best friend is at. Life is going amazing. She's checking all the boxes. Some people love to check them, and she's one of them. And then 2 weeks later, demons invade. So everything she's worked for completely shattered. All of her friends that she has are now getting drafted to fight in this war against these demons that are trying to take over this planet. And then the big question comes up, is Betha really human or not? And what is she willing to do to stop this war and save her friends?
Oh wow! Oh wow! I like when there's that question of identity. Who are you? That's pretty cool. Well, let's meet her. Let's go to the excerpt.
Fantastic. All right. So this is coming from chapter 1 of Choice of the Traveler. Fake it till you make it, Betha whispered to herself, blinking her hazel eyes to keep the tears at bay. Worrying concern about her mother crept to the front of her mind, even as she tried to push it back. Thankfully, she wasn't driving. The taxi driver was the one navigating the roads away from the long term care facility. She ignored the looks pointed her way in the rearview mirror and kept her eyes on the passing scenery. The view outside her window changed slowly from buildings nestled next to each other, separated only by alleys, to more open green spaces with lawns and trees. From the city to the country, but not to the loved yet rundown part of town she used to live in. No, never again. As much as that hurt. Betha brushed her brown hair out of her eyes. She kept herself focused on her own thoughts and what was outside her window as the slight nausea of motion sickness came and went. The back seat had never been her favorite place to ride. The sign announcing that they were passing into packlands soothed her stomach. It wouldn't be long now. They were almost there. The silence in the car had survived the entire trip, turning awkward by the time the taxi pulled over to the sidewalk underneath a big tree. Betha tried to smile as she opened the door into the sunshine. The driver was already setting her duffel bag and suitcase on the sidewalk when she got out of the car. How much do I owe you? She asked, pulling out her wallet. The older gentleman gave her a soft smile. Don't worry about it. Focus on moving in. He slammed the trunk closed and he was off before Betha could object. Her shock left her mouth hanging open, stunned for a moment that he had just nearly driven an hour without being paid. Sure, he had picked her up at Luna's Grace with everything she owned, but did she really seem so lost, even to a total stranger? Fake it till you make it, she said to herself again before she snapped her mouth shut and glanced around. It was move-in day, and she should be happy. This dorm block shouldn't be as busy since it was for the older students. Yet, people were milling about, carrying boxes and bags, and she felt thoroughly out of place. The brick buildings that lined the courtyard and tall trees made the area feel older. Picnic tables already had students at them with boxes stacked up. Everything was so open, well kept, and nice. It took a moment, but she slowly realized that all of the students were others. Little things began to stick out, like people carrying way more than they should, pointed ears, and even some abnormal skin colors like bright green. This was going to be something she needed to get used to. Betha had spent her first 2 years at the local community college full of ungifted humans. Only a few others attended to get cheap prereqs done. And here she was at the opposite end of the spectrum, at one of the most prestigious other focused universities in the state. It was an interesting what an hour-long drive could change. One area was a human-centric town by choice, and here she was on pack land. Her stomach twisted as she could now see how normal she was compared to the rest of them. Normal in a human sense. She didn't have pointed ears or bright skin tone. Instead, her main feature was her piercing hazel eyes. All of the doubts of transferring to the school and selling the house to pay for it hit her hard. The house she had grown up in, that she and her mom had shared as adults these past few years, was now gone. Fake it till you make it, she whispered to herself a third time. The mantra was to keep her from worrying. It wasn't really working, but it was all she had. She was here to learn everything she could about business. Her goal was to eventually own a little cafe, maybe even buy the coffee shop downtown that she used to work at. Christy, the owner, would be retiring in a few years. If she could get her degree and find someone willing to pay her back, it was possible. Betha! Betha turned towards the sound, recognizing that voice instantly. It was the one reason she was at the school to begin with. She smiled with what felt like the first true smile in a long time as her eyes locked with her best friend Angie. Those brilliant golden eyes were recognizable, even when framed by her long dark hair. Betha couldn't help but laugh as Angie darted across the pavement, dodging the shifters and elves and whatever else tried to mow her down without seemingly breaking a sweat. It was almost like a dance until she ran straight into a guy who must have been a troll. He towered above Angie with two horns coming out of his forehead and his skin a deep green. Sorry, Angie yelled as she moved quicker than Betha could keep track of to get out of the way. You are finally here in the big league, the College of St. Luna for the win. I told you that you'd get into the Swinkus School realm side, Angie announced as she finally stood next to her friend. Betha gave in to the hug as Angie pulled her forward, and she felt like it would all work out. It was enough to ground her and let her push the doubts about being here to the back of her mind. The height difference between the two of them always made her feel like a little sister in the best possible way. It is so good to see you. This morning kind of sucked, she whispered into Angie's ear. Aw. Angie gave her a tighter squeeze. You did the right thing. You couldn't keep taking care of your mom. She would want this for you. I know, Betha sniffled. She would push me out the door to figure out who I am. Angie rubbed her back. Your mom was the best, and now she's in a really great place where they can take care of her. Angie, you comin'? Said a deep voice from nearby. Betha pulled away when she realized a few others had joined them. Shifters, by the eye color. The brightest greens, blues, and golds were usually the towel. Angie smiled at Betha and motioned to the two guys. Oh, Betha, this is Ben and Joey. They are pack. Ben is the one with the dark hair. He's a teddy bear. Joey, not so teddy bear, but everyone loves him anyway. Betha sized up the two guys carefully. Ben was broad, built like a football player, with a kindness in his gaze that spoke of some amount of wisdom, despite his youth. Joey, though he looked like a blonde surfer, his rambunctious grin was contagious, and Betha smiled in response. Both of the shifters blushed slightly at the attention and waved awkwardly in response to Angie's teasing introduction, as though they were shy or not used to meeting other people. Joey's nose wrinkled a little as he got closer, and he looked like he was going to sneeze. What are you? Sputtered out of his mouth, his bright blue eyes focused on Betha. Angie glared at him, her eyes wide. At the same time, Ben elbowed him in the side, none too gently. Betha turned a bright red before replying. Human, all the way. Sorry, not sorry. She gave a little self conscious shrug. Ben flashed her a bright white smile and held out his hand. It's nice to meet you, Betha. Ignore the puppy here. Totally smooth. We're heading to the pack lunch. Betha shook his hand slowly, wondering what he was talking about. What lunch? Angie's eyes bugged a little, stepping away from Betha's side. Shoot! I can't be late again. I'll catch up with you this evening, she said to Betha. The conflict was clear on Angie's face as she looked at Betha's bags. Betha quickly spoke up. It's okay. Maybe we're in the same dorm? An unfamiliar female voice caused everyone to turn. Angie's in the pack dorms, but I can help you with your stuff. I'm one of the student check-in coordinators for new transfer students. Angie smiled at the newcomer and then gave Betha a nod. Text me your room number when you get a chance. I'll come visit and help you settle in. With that, the three shifters quickly headed down the street towards one of the bigger buildings, walking in a tight triangle, the two boys leading with Angie in the rear. Angie glanced back once, but Betha set her a thumbs up. I need your name so I could look up what room you're in. My name's Susan, by the way. The woman's voice was sweet as cherry pie, which made Betha smile. She felt a little bit more comfortable now that she had seen Angie, and this woman was definitely putting her at ease. I'm Betha, Betha Dublos. It's nice to meet you, Betha. Let me pull up your info. Susan typed in a few letters on the tablet she pulled out. Found you. You're in dorm room C, bottom floor, number 14. It's one of the quieter dorms. Looks like you're studying business? Me too. We might have some classes together. Susan smiled reassuringly at Betha. She glanced at the duffel bag, then at Betha, sizing her up. I can grab the duffel because I think it's the size of you. Betha couldn't help but giggle. I mean, I am short, but I don't know if I would fit. Betha blushed as she studied the bag. I totally think I would fit. Both of them laughed as Susan grabbed the bag and started down the walkway. Betha had learned to laugh at how short she was, but at least Susan didn't tower over her. The woman only had a few inches on her. So, how do you know Angie? I mean, she's like a pack princess, asked Susan. Oh, well, we went to middle school together and stayed in touch after she changed. Angie still came home for the summers and we would hang out. But what's a pack princess? Betha knew their relationship was weird. Most humans didn't hang out with others. At least it was that way in her small town, which meant her being at the school was weird too. Or maybe not. Susan nodded as they passed other students. I meant nothing negative by it. It's just the rumor is she's one of the last of her kind. Or at least that's what people said a few years ago. Yet she's nice as heck, which makes it hard to be jealous. Everyone seemed to smile at the two of them, and Betha hoped that everyone would be as friendly as they seemed. The trees provided some shade from the sun, but it was still warm. The path wound closer to the brick buildings as they crossed the courtyard. Betha struggled with the fast pace that Susan set. Yeah, she was always really sweet to me. My mom used to joke that we were sisters because of how we acted. Betha's head tilted to one side. I'm glad that we finally get to hang out more, now that we're both going to the same school. Betha had fallen behind by a step, which was why she noticed that Susan almost stumbled. Her blonde hair went all over the place. Susan quickly righted herself, but her voice seemed off as she spoke. I hope so, since it seems like you guys are close. Just a heads up, though. The various majors do tend to stick together. Same with the different races. It can be a little cliquish here. There aren't many humans since the school is on pack lands. Angie might have vouched for you, which should keep you in good shape with the pack, but Susan shrugged before grabbing the door to enter the building. You are just down the hall, luckily with a single. She opened the door with number 14 on it and quickly added, let me toss this on your bed, then I'll grab your RA so you can get your keys. Susan seemed to flee once Betha was in her room. Her manner had definitely changed when it became clear how close Betha was to Angie. The turn in conversation seemed to have spooked the girl. Betha turned towards the room and tried not to let Susan's comments get to her. The room was a good size, but it wouldn't take her long to unpack. Her duffel bag was big, but it was all she owned in the world. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. I got this. It doesn't matter that I'm human. I can do this. In and out. Just breathe. A knock on the open door caused her eyes to snap open. Susan was back with an elvish woman. Her tall ears poked out of her brown hair, sporting several piercings. Hi, I'm Riley, and I'm the resident assistant for this area. She held out her hand and Betha shook it. It's nice to meet you. Betha's voice trailed off as Riley held onto her hand just a little bit too long. The woman was looking at the birthmark on Betha's wrist. That's one weird tattoo, Riley commented. Betha pulled her hand back and shrugged. It's a birthmark. I like to think it looks like a star. Susan pinched her lips together like she wanted to say something, but she resisted. Riley shrugged and continued, that's cool. Anyway, you can come to me with questions or problems. If anyone gives you shit about being human, text me. I'll deal with the assholes. Here's my number. Since this is older housing, I have the two lower floors. It is a quiet building, but yeah, if you need help, reach out. Otherwise, I have a few more check ins to do. Riley smiled at Susan. Thanks for grabbing me. Today has been crazy. Betha smiled as Riley headed out, but Susan paused near the door, turning back to her. You should get that checked out. It looks like a sunspot to me. Betha tilted her head in confusion. You mean my birthmark? I've always had it. It's never caused me any problems. Susan pointed to a spot covered up by a t shirt. I had one removed last year since the doctor was concerned. Figured I would mention it just in case, plus the health center is free. Then Susan headed out, waving as she nearly fled again. Once she was alone, Betha closed the door and rubbed her fingers over the mark on her wrist. Hopefully, it wasn't a spun spot. The health center might be free, but she doubted it covered something like cancer. Medical bills were the last thing she wanted to deal with. Not again. Heck, she had just sold the house to pay off her mom's bills and cover her tuition here at St. Luna's. Thinking of the house brought tears to her eyes. Crying would not help her unpack her things or help her get a business degree, so she brushed them away. You got this, Betha, she told herself. Fake it till you make it.
Wow. I like that fake it till you make it.
It comes up a little bit in the series, but she does thankfully outgrow it.
But
Is
it's
that
so true. Like, and it, like, so many of us, especially, I remember being. This reminded me very much of college.
it is hard back to college.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And in college, that's a lot of what you're doing is faking it till you make it. Because especially as a freshman, like, you don't know. It's a whole new world. It's completely different than high school, and you went from being the top of the social hierarchy the senior in high school to being the very bottom of the university. And if the university has got, a lot of students, or if they have like master's degree students and postdocs and all of that, like you could be at that's a very large hierarchy that you could be at the very bottom of.
Yes, that's for sure, especially in her case, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
not only
with
is she at the bottom of the
supernaturals.
hierarchy,
Yeah.
but she's also human surrounded by folks who are very much not human.
So is she the only human at that school?
She is not the only human at the school, but there are very few other humans that are around.
So you have to be like a special case to get in, like have something they need, some special skill, or um, something that makes the university or the college look good, I guess.
Pretty much, pretty much. Someone has to vouch for you to get in, because there's a lot of human central schools, and so there aren't a lot of other central schools. But this is the biggest one.
I see. So you want to go there because her best friend is there, which makes
Mhm.
sense. So, but that had to be intimidating to decide to go to a school full of supernaturals when you yourself are not one, just because you want to follow your best friend.
Yeah, and part of it is she does latch on to Angie because she's the last one she has. One of the things that does happen in one of my free short stories that I give out is about the summer before, and it's where
Oh,
her mom does start to come down with Alzheimer's. And so it had
oh,
been just her and her mom for a long time until it couldn't continue anymore. And so right before this, she drops her mom off at a long-term facility. And she ends up heading to St. Luna's.
it's hard. You can only take care of them to a certain point, and then you have to give it over to a facility because they need 24/7, and you can't do 24/7. You can't. You have to sleep and eat, and you know, you have other things that you need. Not that you don't want to be there 24/7, but it's just you just can't.
Yeah, and I wrote it in tribute to my father-in-law because he's going through that. I pulled a lot of those similarities from there for him, from
Yeah.
him.
My
So
grandfather had dementia. He didn't exactly have Alzheimer's, but it got to the point where he couldn't be at home anymore because you needed to be in a place where there's no gas to turn on, where the meals are provided, and it's really difficult to adult proof a house for somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia. Because you still need to live, especially if you're living
mhm.
with them. You need to be able to turn on a stove and get uh, you know, heat to cook things, or it's really difficult.
Yeah. And you'll see echoes of that in the next couple of chapters of the book, of her dealing with the decision of putting her mom into Luna's Grace and then going to St. Luna's for college. But yeah, her and Angie stay really close, and it's definitely one of the things that led her to wanting to go there. Is it's the only family member she has left.
So the fact that the school and the care facility have the same name, does that mean they're located in the same town, or is it just a coincidence?
No, they are located in the same town. It isn't too far away from her. Luna's Grace is an offshoot of the college. It was started by part of the medical program from the college. There's a lot of history built up surrounding the college itself, Packlands, and to the facilities that they do provide.
I see, I see, I
Mhm.
see. So what is this about the sunspot? Is that because when you said, is that what you said? Because when I heard that, I'm thinking of like the I'm into science, so I'm thinking of the actual sunspots on the sun. But I'm like, wait, no, I don't think that's what we're talking about. They're not on people's
No,
skin
sometimes you can
usually.
get sunspots that turn into skin cancer.
Okay.
hmm And so that's why she's freaking out because she's like, I just dealt with all these medical bills. I do not need a problem uh, with skin cancer. It does play
Mm.
further into what happens. The next chapter is the next two chapters. She does ends up going to the medical center, and we find out more. And uh, spoiler, not spoiler, it's not a sunspot.
Oh, okay. So our heroine is not going to be going through chemo or anything.
Nope, she is
Mm.
not going to be going through chemo. She's going to definitely be dealing with some demons, though.
She might prefer the chemo over the demons. I don't
There
know.
are moments. There are moments, especially in later books, that it might be a little bit easier. But uh, But yeah, there's just a ton of fantasy lore that I've built surrounding all of this because all of
And
the races
we're
have
going to
lore
dig
too.
into it. All right, let's start
Uh,
with the demons. Who are they? Why are they invading? And who is the leader of them?
So, as far as most people know, demons don't exist. So, demons haven't been seen on the world that we're currently at. Demons aren't part of the Accords. So, this world that we're dealing with has what's called a nexus. A nexus is a system of portals that links various worlds together. So, that's why there's all these races on this world, right? The Fey plane is connected to our world, the angelic plane. There's some desert worlds, there's a water world, and all of them are connected, and it's the main source of commerce on the planet is trade between the various worlds.
Wait, wait,
So
wait. So you can actually, like, can a regular person go back and forth between these worlds, or do you need to be like of a special part of the hierarchy or doing a specific job part of that commerce system? I'm sorry to cut in, but I'm like,
oh no, go for it.
I need information on this. This is kind of neat.
Mhm.
I need to understand this nexus because it's a cool idea.
So technically, anyone can travel between the worlds, but it depends on the treaty that was signed. So an example is the angelic world, which we have a treaty with. Uh, you can't travel to the angelic world without express permission from the archangels. They're the ones who rule over that world. So it depends. The Feywilds, you have to sign an agreement that has terms and conditions that basically are like, if something happens to you, not our fault. You are going here of your own free will. You cannot sue anyone. No
Great.
insurance policies come into play. It's like you're jumping off a cliff, right? You are going because there's a lot of trade between the Feywild and here. There's a couple different portals to the Feywilds because that's a little weird of a world. Um, but there's also several other worlds that we connect to as well, that have trade coming back and forth. And then there's a world that we actually can't go to. It opens up into literally the middle of the air over a never ending ocean.
Oh,
And
wow.
so we haven't explored that world. The portal's there. We haven't signed any treaties, but 2 feet down, there's water and there's things in the water. Nothing's crawled out into the portal, but so there's this whole realm that different realms that you can travel to from this world. Most humans don't. The accords that have been signed between these worlds are actually in place to protect humanity. We humans are viewed as the weakest species.
Who? All right. So, who created the Nexus, and how did these accords come into being?
So, about 200 to 300 years ago, there was an all-out war uh, through one of the portals from the Feywilds. Basically, elves came tumbling through this portal into Terra, which is the world that we're currently on, and kind of went on a murder spree per the history books. This is what most people think has happened. In turn, a traveler came forth. Travelers are individuals with the ability to move portals from places. They can also open and close them. And she came forth. She stopped the war. And she connected with all of these people from the other side of these portals and brought them all together to sign the Accords. The Accords are a peace treaty. They've lasted for the last 200 to 300 years. Peace has completely reigned. It is a forced peace, though. It is voted on each, I think, about 10 years from the human population. And every time they vote it to stay as it is, it stays as it is. Now, the Accords do have a stick, right? There is a bad side to the Accords, and that is mentioned where in the blurb, all of Betha's friends have been drafted to fight in this war. So in this world, there is a draft. Humans are not subject to the draft. If you are of other descent or an other, you are subject to the draft. So if the draft is called, you can get pulled in to fight. And all of her friends that she's been making at this university are all other, and so they've been drafted into this war to fight against the demons.
So, all right. So then, who created this Nexus, and who? So, are these travelers enforcing these accords? Like, who is enforcing that? Who are the police of these
So
accords?
the guard was created. It is the fighting branch on this world, and that's what you get drafted to. So there's one traveler on the world, Kyra. You do meet her in the story. She is the one who keeps everything together. Part of the Accords was creating a council. It's kind of like our UN. So all of the species that are on Terra mostly have a representative on it, and they're the body that then are the ones who enforce the peace in any way necessary.
Gotcha. That's
Mhm.
wild. So, or you haven't answered who has created the Nexus, or how did that come into being?
That was Traveler Kyra. She's the one who
Oh,
created the Nexus 200 years ago.
why
Mhm.
did she create the Nexus? She was
It
just
was to
bored, wanted
it
to go
was to
somewhere.
stop it was to stop the war, or at least that's what the history books say.
Oh, I see. It's before it was like one realm connecting with another. She's like, well, I'm just going to connect all the realms, so then anybody can invade anybody else, and that might convince people to that maybe we need to
It
keep
was
straight.
her solution to stop the war that was currently happening.
So she could close them all too.
Maybe. Try not to get into book 3 too much here.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm gonna try and get you to deliver, give up the spoilers because that's my job as the
Oh no, it
interviewer.
is all right. I will give plenty of spoilers. There's a couple of things I don't talk about though. I'll be like, you need to read a book for that one. But believe me, you do find out a lot more about Kyra.
Oh, cool. So that's definitely cool, and we're gonna get to see a lot more about Betha because she is our entry into this world. She is our main character for
I
this
will
book.
say in book 4, because I'm literally outlining it right now, we get into the history of the Nexus a lot more. Like what actually happened. Because as we currently know in the world that we live in, just because the history books say something doesn't mean that's how it actually happened.
I see. That's true. Like his history is written by the victor,
It is.
so that's that. It makes sense that in that world it would be. It may not be accurate. It's not accurate in
Mhm.
my world either. Their history
And
books are
our
wrong.
history books have definitely been rewritten a couple of times. But yeah, it does come up where, well, this is what everyone said happened, and then you're talking to someone because there are several species of others that live several hundred years that are like, that's what they say.
I
That's what they
remember it
say.
differently.
I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna stay over here. Yep. I'll stay over here.
That's pretty wild. All right, so we've got angels, we've got demons,
hmm
so we've got the demonic invasion. So the other races are just, and the other supernatural races, if they're on Earth, they get drafted. If they're living in their realm, they just kind of chill there. And or do they have to protect Terra? Like if you're just chilling in the Fey Wildlands, do you need to come to Terra and fight this war and protect the people on Terra, or is it only the supernaturals who are on Terra who get drafted to fight in it? And everybody else is
So
like, gonna sit back with a bowl of popcorn and see what happens.
So it does come up that certain agreements that were created, reinforcements are on their way. Now,
Okay.
these portals exist, but some of these worlds and traveling through these portals are not instantaneous. So, one of the things we do learn, an example is the angelic realm. It's not a hop, skip, and a jump. You walk through and it's like 5 seconds later. No, 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 no. That realm in particular, because it's so far away in the universe, it actually takes a couple of weeks to go from our world to their world, even though as you're stepping through the doorway, it's just 2 seconds to step through the doorway. It takes 2 weeks or longer.
I see. So there's like a
hmm
time dilation happening,
Yes.
almost
So
like
portal.
crossing a world, possible, what's that called? Wormhole. No, that's
Yes.
still not the right word.
I know what you mean, though. Yeah.
Wormhole. That's
hmm
it. Wormhole. Right letter, right starting letter, but wrong everything else.
Yes. So there are time differences between the worlds. It's not like, oh, we're all a 24-hour world. No, 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 no. You that comes up also later in the series where some of these worlds operate on a 36-hour world, or day and night are vastly different, or it doesn't always line up because our time is off from their time. And
Mm-hmm.
so traveling between them, like I said, it isn't as easy as just walking through a portal. I mean, it could be, but that doesn't mean that you just lost a year of your life, right? By traveling through that portal. Because by the time you get back to Terra, how much time has actually passed?
So let me get this right. So the person who is crossing the portal does not notice the time dilation until they get to the other side. and it's or actually they may not notice it till they go back to where they started from, and it's many weeks or months or how or whatever since
Later.
they left. And like, for me it was only 3 days, but for you it was 3 months.
Yes. Hmm.
That's cool.
It's yeah, it is one of those things. And it doesn't matter in a lot of cases, but in some of the worlds it's very drastic. It's like, okay, this world must be farther away with how the worlds are laid out. Unlike say the Feywilds, we have uh the Nexus has I think 3 different portals that lead to various areas of the Feywilds. And so back and forth between there isn't too much of a time difference. But the angelic plane there's a huge time difference. I tried to map it all out once, but I actually need like a 3D, like this is Terra, this is a world that overlaps with it, uh, to actually like map it out in
Mm-hmm.
3D.
And are these realms like spherical, like they're an actual planet, or are they like some other configuration?
Uh, Later in the series, someone describes it as they are leaves on a tree, and they touch in various spaces, and some grow in between each other and twist.
That's wild. Do the inhabitants, like, as they're moving around that world that is growing in between two others and twists around it, do they notice that curvature?
They don't notice the curvature, but they might notice a tear to another world, or they might fall into the other world because the world is so close.
I see.
Hmm.
That's pretty wild.
Hmm.
That's wow. All right. So why are the demons invading? They're just bored and they had nothing to do on a Saturday night, and it seemed like, hey, let's invade Terra. Were they part of these accords, or so you said that they
The
were not?
demons are not part of the Accords, and
Okay.
no one on Terra had seen a demon except for some angels and some very old vampires. So Terra has been demon free for at least 500 years, if not longer. And so it comes as a total shock that some of these myths and legends are true. I mean, yes, you have a neighbor who might be a shifter, but for some reason, but demons can't be real, right? Like, we haven't seen one. We've seen everything else. Like, everyone else, loves our world. Um, but no, they do start invading in various locations across the world through some terrors. At first, no one quite knows why. It just seems that they start targeting city centers and places of commerce and government.
Hmm.
And so it does seem that they want to take the planet for one of their own.
And where are they coming from? Do they have like a home realm, or are they just floating in the ether in between the leaves on the tree?
So, one of the things you learn is that the demons have invaded several worlds. So, there are different circles of hell. There's the first circle of hell, which is the home world of the demons. There's a second circle of hell. There's a third circle of hell, which is where the bulk of these demonic creatures are coming from.
Right.
Uh, but we also learn there's several others because the angels are fighting with demons on a different world, and all of that starts spilling forth. So demons by nature, the person who's leading them uh, is conquering other worlds and taking them over.
And what's the point of conquering them? Are they trying to find a nicer realm to inhabit? They need more space. They want more
They
power.
they are a society that thrives on slavery, and they require expansion so their society does not collapse.
I see.
Mhm.
This is wild.
We get much more into the demons after book one. Like they're invading Terra in book one, and book two and three, you start to see what else they're doing in the universe, and we see behind the curtain about why they're doing what they're doing, and they're not all one dimensional, right? It's not like, oh my god, they're a demon, they're bad, right? Like no, 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 no.
Yeah.
It's there's a whole culture behind it, and about why they have to do what they're doing, and about those who are trying to change it so they aren't invading all these other worlds.
Oh, wow. So we don't just get Betha's point of view. It sounds like we get the point of view of other
No,
characters
so
as
the
well.
Traveler series is multi POV. I know some people hate that. I know
I
they
like
do.
it. I'm a fan.
But well, it was more there's different perspectives. I really wanted in book 1 for you to see through the villain's perspective. He isn't the nicest demon person, but towards the end of the book you start to meet his sister and how she starts to play in and where she's coming from and what she has to do into books 2 and 3, where it's like, okay, is she evil? Is she not? She's a demon. Why is she doing what she's doing? And what their father, the king, is doing. And so it gives us a very nice viewpoint into that, as well as you do get to see out of Angie's eyes, along with a couple other of Betha's friends. You get to see what's going on from their viewpoints, especially since they know a lot more than Betha does, right?
I
Because
see.
Betha is human, she hasn't grown up in another society, right? She isn't a shifter. She isn't an angel, right? She grew up as human. And so there's just certain things she doesn't know. And while you can always have info dumps, I wanted to limit that. And so you as the reader always tend to know more than Betha does.
Oh wow, that's no, that's really cool. I'm still stuck on the worms being leaves on a tree.
It comes
That's
up
so
more and
cool.
more. And
Yeah.
book 4 really dives into the leaves on a tree and
So
the
what
tree
is
of
the
life.
tree though? So there are leaves on a tree, but what is the tree?
That's the big question for book 4.
Ah, so we don't get to know that until
Not
then.
quite yet. Not quite yet. I know what it is. I will put it this way: uh, all the worlds are on the tree, unless they're not. And if they're not, then there is no life, because life cannot exist if it's not connected to the tree.
So even the demons' realms are on the tree.
Hmm. Yep.
Are they all there? Are they all in the same branches, or
There are different branches. So all of the worlds that we visit through the Nexus are on the same branch.
is the nexus the branch of the tree?
The Nexus itself is a gathering of portals, so the worlds that are already connected to this said world. Because each world usually connects to another world at least, unless it's the end of a branch. But the Nexus itself, this is a world, our world, Terra, is one of the worlds that has multiple portals on it. That then connect to other worlds that have multiple portals. Like the Feywilds also have multiple portals off of them. And so funneling things into Nexus to have it being a trading hub, since it's way more hospitable than the Feywilds, is what kind of centered the Nexus itself.
I see. I
Mhm.
see.
But don't worry, we go into it because Beth is like, "What do you mean the tree? Like, I need some help here." Like, she's like, "Explain this to a 2-year-old." Like, and so we do go into it where it's like, "Okay, this is how I would picture it." Mhm.
All right.
It's so
So
I
go
love it.
on.
We have so like I have pages and pages of like what happened on this world to create this species this way. What's the governance structure for this species? How does that affect things? 1,000 years ago, how did this species get to Terra? Is this species native to Terra, or were they forced here because their world became inhospitable because of demons? Right? Because this isn't the first time the demons have tried to take over a planet, and they have succeeded several times.
Oh wow! And obviously, the people living that in those other places had to go somewhere or
Hmm.
be completely destroyed.
Hmm.
But it'd be very difficult to completely destroy an entire civilization. So more likely
Yeah.
that some were able to flee.
Book 3, we discover a species and how it got to Terra. And there's a lot of their oral history that has been lost. And so they're also rediscovering it. And they run into survivors of their species who are not located on Terra. And it's very eye opening to see from the viewpoint of someone who's living in an occupied world that the demons do completely control.
Wow, that's so wild. All right. So you're not going to tell us what Betha is because you said she's not human or
She's
what
not
her
human.
powers
You
are.
find out really quick what Betha is. So it's literally chapter, I want to say chapter 3. So you can flip through the book and figure it out. Yeah.
All right. What else can we talk about that's not a spoiler?
Well, I can totally I can give you the spoiler about what Betha is. Because it is chapter 4 where it comes in. Dun dun dun.
It's all going according to
Um,
my evil plan.
putting me on the spot. I told you I'd cave. So in chapter 4, you do find out that the mark that she has is the mark of a traveler. So she is a little baby traveler who did
Oh,
not know she was a traveler. And there's definite conflict because her mom had a mark, and it's brought up, well, how come my mom didn't tell me about any of this? And there's some tension that started because she learned she does have a ticking clock where she has to make the decision, is she going to end up like her mom, because her mom doesn't have Alzheimer's? That isn't what's wrong with her mom. uh, it's a traveler disease that she has, and she has to make the decision, does she want to end up like her mother, or does she want to make specific choices to not end up in the same state?
oh wow. And
Mhm.
so and travelers can make portals. What else can travelers do?
So in the book, you learn that travelers can close tears. So the demons are creating tears, and that's how they're invading Terra, right? All of a sudden, a tear will appear, and demons start pouring through. And it's not like you don't know where they're going to happen. And that's where the chaos is coming in because it's unexpected. But the everyday person can't close one of these tears, and travelers can. So she's going to be tasked with trying to stop these tears from spreading and closing these tears that the demons have opened.
Oh wow.
Mhm.
That's cool. So she's got like portal magic, sort of.
She does have portal magic, and it starts to get super interesting in books 2 and 3, where you start to learn other things she can do with her portal magic. Uh, and things get super fascinating. Like I said, we learn a lot more about Kyra, who's the current traveler at the Nexus, and why she did what she did, because she does end up mentoring uh, Betha a little bit. But and you start to hear all sorts of restrictions that have been cast on her. So you start going into it pretty deep. It's super fascinating.
No, it sounds it. I'm fascinated. I'm just hearing about it.
I geek out hardcore because so I have the Traveler series. It'll be a 4-book series. I have a spin-off series that's launching in January that gives the first book happens at the same time as Choice of the Traveler, and it covers a different section of what's happening in this invasion, and it gives more depth to the world. Like you find out what other characters who maybe didn't go on this adventure for some reason, or um, made different choices, what they're up to, which is nice because you get a different viewpoint about, okay, so and so, he's not in this battle with his friends. Where did he end up? Right? Well, he's actually over here saving their bacon without them knowing about it in this area. And so it brings a lot more depth to the world with the crossover.
Oh, that's cool. How many
Mhm.
books do you think will be in that spin-off series?
So that spin-off series will be either 3 or 4 books. If it goes longer, it's because I deviated and we left the world. we left Terra because there's a potential that it might end up on a different world pretty substantially. But we'll see.
Are you think you might set other stories in this fascinating world that you have created besides these
Yes.
two?
There's already some standalone stories that I have planned, that are just deep dives into one character. Not during this event. There's only 2 books that this event takes place in, and that's Choice of the Traveler, and then um, The first book in the new series is The Hidden Seer. Those are the only two books that are going to overlap about this main event. They do deviate because they go to different parts of the world. I am looking at a couple other characters that I've gotten some readers who are like, what happened to so and so? So one of the characters is Jessica, and she's a day walker. So she's a vampire, but she can walk around in the day. Um, and they're like, what happened to her? Like, so and so didn't happen. She didn't die because I kill people. But Jessica didn't die. What happened to her? Like, I love Jessica. I need more information on Jessica. Like, and I'm like, you'll hear more information on Jessica. Like, I'll get there. Like, you'll figure out where she ended up and what she ended up doing. Don't worry, I promise. Like, so there will be a series of standalones that is deep diving into certain characters, what they did, what happened, but it'll be set, a couple years later or after the Traveler series is completed.
That's wild. That's so cool, though. You've created you definitely created a very cool world that can support mini series.
The goal was to create a universe that had a bunch of different series in it or standalones, and the goal was you didn't have to read them all. So there's definitely been a lot of fatigue with a lot of readers I've talked to and a lot of series I read where all of a sudden it's getting up to 15, 16, 17 books in this series and you're just like, I'm done. Like what I don't remember what happened here, or just a lot of series fatigue. And so I wanted it to be books and series that you could pick up and set down. And so if you read this one book, completely standalone, fantastic story all by itself. Yet if you did read also this series, there's Easter eggs in it that
Mm-hmm.
bring it together. And you're like, oh my God, like that's so and so from way back when here. This is where they ended up. And it's a way to reward readers who like to see bigger universes and the ramifications of certain events without sticking to the same main character.
Yeah, I do that too. I have 5 series set in the same world.
It
So
is the
I
way to do
totally
it.
feel you.
It is the way to do it. The other big driver was I kept getting requests for, like I said, books that were a little bit shorter that they could read in one sitting, or they could pick up and put down. A big common one was a lot of moms I was talking to were like, I need something that I can read that's not BuzzFeed on my phone while I'm at my kids' doctor's appointments or during soccer or Pee Wee football or right, like all these other things. And I'm like, nope, I got that. Like this is a quick, easy read, and yet it still has all this lore and such behind it. So you get that same feeling you'd get from a 600-page book by the time you've read book 3.
Yeah, I don't do the 600-page books. I did one that was 500, and I was starting to lose track of the story after a while. So
And
I
there's nothing
don't
wrong
do
with
that
that. Sometimes
anymore.
I'm
Yeah.
totally into that, right? Like it
Yeah.
used to be you would pick that book to take to the beach with you because you weren't going to run out of something to read,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier on your phone to read a book that long. But God forbid you set it down and you don't pick it back up for 3 weeks. And then you're like, oh shit, what happened? I don't know
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah.
Like,
That's why I only have 2 that are that long. And one of them is like, there were so many things to wrap up. It was very fast paced. There's so many different storylines and like things that people wanted to see that like it ended up just being like almost 500 pages long. But
mhm,
it had like 3 climaxes because we had so many things to wrap up.
mhm. No, I totally get that. Right. The other side of it was I did want to publish on a quarterly schedule. So a new book in this universe is coming out almost every quarter. And so you are getting the next chunk of story with a complete resolution each quarter that's set in the same universe.
That's what I try to do every quarter. Sometimes the characters don't cooperate with that.
Sometimes they don't. Or all of a sudden you're like, oh, look at this contest that's going on. I can write a book in 2 months and fit it into my schedule somehow.
Yep.
It's like,
That's how I have
hey.
5 series.
Mm-hmm.
And then you write it and like the characters are like, well, yeah, there was just this stuff you planned. Nah, we're not doing that. We're doing this other thing that you can't possibly complete in the word count of the story that you were going to write for this contest or box set or whatever thing that you were planning on doing. They're just like, yeah, whatever your plan was, we're not doing that. We're doing something different.
That's why I said the series that's launching in January, it's either going to be 4 books or more than that, because this character is being very opinionated about some cultural things that happen, and they're like, this needs to change. I'm like, you
I
can't keep
love
saying this
that.
needs to change. If this changes, this is not going to be 4 books here. This is going to be a much longer series, and we're going to have to leave Terra for a different world. Like,
That's what the character wants, though. That's their plan.
I'm like, you got to wrap up what's going on Terra first, and I know that'll take 2 to 3 bucks. Like, I know it'll take 2 to 3 bucks. So I'm like, I got that. I know it'll be 3 to 4 bucks, but if they have their way, they might be leaving, and we'll see where it goes from there.
That's so wild. I don't know. I like that when I always wonder if like readers in the reading, if they can tell that like the characters decided like to totally ditch what the author had planned and do their own thing. Like, I wonder if they can tell, you know.
I had that happen in book 2, where someone was like, I'm not going on that adventure. And I'm like, excuse me? You are going on
Right?
that adventure. They're like, nope, totally not. Not at all. They appear in
Peace
the
out.
second book of this spin-off series, because that's where they went. Like, I'm like, dude, you have to. Like, you gotta go. It's like, no, I'm
And then
not
you're
going.
like,
I'm gonna
wait, I
leave.
have this void now. I needed this specific skill set that you had to make this all work. You're not there, because that's my problem. I write a lot of epic fantasy, and there's very specific skill sets that we need for certain things in order to make so the good guys can actually like win. And I'm like, great, now I don't have this specific skill set. How are we going to defeat this thing?
Little spoiler here. We lost the healer.
Oh man, that's the hard.
The
That's the
healer booked
hardest.
it. And I'm like, excuse me? Like, we're going into battle, and the healer's like, I'm going this way.
Oh my
Yep.
god,
Mm-hmm.
that's hard. That's hard. That's hard. Or the worst is when they have powers and like there's a situation where their powers could be taken away and they just make the wrong decision and they lose their powers. And you're like, well, how the heck are we supposed to defeat the bad, the villain who's super powerful when you gave up your magic, you idiot?
Mm-hmm. I haven't had that come up yet.
I did.
I really hope that
That
doesn't
happened
come
in
up.
book 4, and I was like, okay, we're not going to get to the point that I wanted to get to in book 5 if you have no magic. We are sunk. I now have to plot you out of this and hope you cooperate. He didn't.
Of course not.
He didn't. He totally didn't. And I think it ended up being better than like the way it ended up happening. Get him getting it back. That's not
Mm-hmm.
really a spoiler. The book is about a mage. So the whole series is led by a mage. So it that was it one. I don't think anybody who read the book for Cursebreaker Falls when he lost his magic had any doubt that he would eventually get it back.
Yeah.
Just like the question was when and
Mm-hmm.
how, because he was very reluctant about his magic before that point. So how do you get someone who didn't actually want it to decide that they need to get it back and to actually go and do the things to get it back? So
Oh, yeah, no, I haven't had it go so far as that they got rid of it. I've had someone
oh
who
yeah,
really hated
you
their
got to put them both.
abilities, like who says they would give him up, but they're getting to the point where maybe I wouldn't actually give him up. Like, I can
Oh
do
no,
more good
he
with
did it.
them.
No, he did it. The villain
Um,
asked him, the villain basically gave him a choice. It was like, you can give up your magic, I'll let you go, or you can keep it and I'll enslave you. It's up to you. Choice is yours. He chose to give it up. And I was like, no, you were supposed to make the other decision to get close to him so you could. Now what do I do?
you should write an alternative book. What happens if he hadn't given up his magic?
I've thought about it, but then I'd be stuck with him still being reluctant and wondering because he was born with magic, and I'd be stuck with him like constantly like feeling that this was not his decision to have magic. It was something that was put on him, like an uncomfortable suit of clothes that you cannot take off. And at least this way, him losing it and having to make the decision to get it back, that it sucks to be complete human with no magic at all. um the main character is a single parent, so he has a son who refuses to like stay with babysitters. He comes with all sorts of very creative ways of getting out of like being babysat and ends up in all the big conflicts, even though he's a small child. Thankfully, my main character can cast very strong shields, so the little boy never gets hurt. We go through all sorts of really fun magical shenanigans to keep that from happening. And so after his father lost his magic, like he does not understand because the son is like he wants magic in the worst way possible. He thinks magic is very cool, and like it just boggles his little mind. So he's on a mission to convince his father to get it back.
Oh.
And they're being like, there's a monster destroying the underground city where they live, so they're in like danger. Like things are falling, and the father can't cast shields to like shield them, so they're stuck like running around like scared people. And he's just not like, he's like, I don't like this. They've never done this before because he could always cast shields to protect himself, so he's never ran from danger. He'd never had any reason to, and it's an all new experience, and he hates it. And his son's like, well, you could get your magic back.
Poke, 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 get your magic
yeah,
back.
oh yeah. The entire book until he's like, maybe you're right. Maybe I do want it back.
That's a good way to go from a reluctant hero to hero.
Yeah, he's definitely embracing it more in the later books.
Okay.
Yeah. There was definitely some character growth, which is why I was like, I'm mad because now I have no idea how we're going to fix this. But it ended up being like the 5th book where he had no magic and had to like just come to that decision and then figure out how to get both of his magics back. It took him that book and book 6. And by the end of book 6, he had both of them back. But and at that point, he was like, I am a mage. That's who I am. And maybe. And it ended with like a reversal of the first line, the last line of the first book, where he was like, "Oh God, I'm going to have more monsters, more of all the things that drove me nuts for the last 3 days, more dangerous situations." And he was like, "Dread, I don't want this." And his son is like, we get to go on an adventure tomorrow. And he's like, "No, oh God, I don't want any more of these. We barely survived the one we just had." And at the end of the 6th book, after he's gotten his magic back and chosen to be a mage, he's like, tomorrow is probably going to involve more danger, more monsters, more of all the things that, of the last 6 months have. But you know what? I'm okay with that because that's my life. And I'm a mage and I have the magic. I can handle this. So like, it was
good.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. It was really hard to write those 2 books, though. They took like a long time because I had no idea. There was no plan for any of this.
Nope, I totally get that.
Yeah. So I hope that your characters don't give you that kind of trouble where you're like, they do like such a 180 and you're like, okay, how do I get
him
you
leaving
anywhere?
the party and being like, and it doesn't help that they had someone else who was like, he really shouldn't go with you on this, and it's someone who saved their asses before, and so they were like, okay, like we can go with this. But it is definitely fascinating watching the party change, right? So yeah.
I just wonder if readers can tell, like if they're reading a book, if they can tell that here's where the character rebels, like here's where things went off the rails, and the poor author was trying to figure, okay, how do we get you from where you want to go to where I want you to go? Is this even possible anymore?
Some authors don't have that issue though, right? They're like, nope, I'm a hardcore plotter. This is what's going to happen come hell or high water. I do plot things out. I have a lot of history I have to keep track of. But my outlines are very one sentences, like 15 sentences. Here's the scenes I need to write, and things do deviate by the time I get to act 2 and 3, right? It's like, okay, I need to rewrite my outline now about where we're heading on this lovely adventure. And that's how you end up with spin-off series.
That's true. That's true. I've just gotten to the point where I just make 10 bullet points of things that we absolutely have to do in this book because they were promised at the end of a previous book, or like there was somewhere in one of the series we promised that this would happen. So y'all have to do this and leave the rest up to them. And they fight me less if I give them less instructions.
But yeah, readers will be able to explore way more of the worlds that I have in the coming books. So
That's
this
cool.
isn't just a one and done. There's this series, there's a spin-off series, and like I said, more than likely I'm going to have a group of standalones as well because I have readers asking for more information. What happened with this character, especially my beta readers who just read the book that'll be coming out in October. They're like, we are going back to this world, right? Right?
Yeah, and
We're
that's the
going
last
back.
one, right? That's the last one in Betha's series.
There's one more. So, book two is coming out in July. Book three will
Oh,
be out in
okay.
October, and then book one of the spin-off series is coming out in January, and book four of Betha's series is coming out in April. I wanted a little bit of time to be like, okay, is this going to be 4 books or 6 books? Because there was an option for it to go to 6, but the characters kind of pivoted, and that's okay. We'll
She
see when I'm
decided
writing
she's
book 4.
tired. She wants to retire from being the main character
She's
and chill out for a
she's
while.
a little like I was supposed to be going to college. Like I can't keep saving the world. Like when do I get to not save a world? Like and so
Hmm.
that's what she's dealing with now and she'll be dealing with it in book 4. So we'll see if it goes back to 6 books or not. The more I write book 4, we'll see.
That's so wild. This has been
Mhm.
great. Is there anything else you want to say about Choice of the Traveler or any of the world or the lore? So I want to be respectful of everyone's time because we just hit the hour mark about 30 seconds ago.
Um we did. Uh no, I think that's about it. Basically, if you like interconnected series and universes, the you should start reading the series because it's a good jumping off point to get to know the characters and the setting.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, no, you're welcome to come back anytime. I have an open door policy on these things.
When I get to the standalones, we should totally have another
Yeah,
conversation about lore and how it's developed and changed since this conversation.
sure. And how much the character, how much have the characters stuck to your outlines?
Right? I'm very interested to see how things go over the next couple of books. So, mhm.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. And that's going to do it for this episode. I am Melinda Kucsera, your indie fantasy author, and I write fantastic books when I'm not being kidnapped by dragons or chased by armies of fictional creatures. And I don't understand how they all get into my apartment, but somehow they do. So if you want to read about that, you can join my newsletter, and I'll have the links I'll have all the links in the description. Toni's, mine, all of that. And Toni and I are actually in the self-published fantasy blog off number 9. Choice of the Traveler is one of the entrants, and my book, Chris Breaker Enchanted, is one of the entrants. 300 books can enter, 10 will advance to semifinals, 1 will be crowned the winner for SPFB09 for 2023. So I hope you're cheering on both my book, Chris Breaker Enchanted, and Toni's book, Choice of the Traveler. And we have many months to find out what's going on with that and who's getting into the semifinals. So there won't be any news about that for quite some time. But thank you all so much. And if you want to support the show or if you want to get access to my books before anyone else and get thanked in them, join my community on Patreon. We'd love to have you. Thank you so much.